welcome Deb Brown and Becky McCrae from Save Your Town. And they're going to kind of walk us through the thoughts that we had last week and find ways that we can have what we can do as a community to implement some of those steps. And I'm Stacy Kramer Moore. I'm the Director of Tourism here for the City of Shawnee. So welcome everyone. And we're going to have a great discussion. Thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you for having us come. I'm Deb Brown, and I spent quite a few days in Shawnee last week, so I'm happy to report back about the things we talked about. So thank you for coming today, and this is being recorded. So let's jump right in. There we go. So what do you want? I wrote 387 different things down that people said they wanted. And then when I got home, I tabulated that data. And these are the top 7 categories. So it's business, city, buildings, housing or unhoused, relationships, and tourism. So I'm going to share some stories and ideas with you. And then at the end, we'll answer some questions. First of all, I want you to listen as I go through this presentation. Listen for those ideas that get you excited. And there'll be a lot, but think about the ones that are going to match up with your big idea for the community. And that'll be the one to write down. And you can put your questions in the chat box and we'll go over them at the end. Folks wanted to see new businesses in the empty buildings, more restaurants that stayed open later, food trucks, food on Mondays. They want more mom and pop kind of shops with unique items that you can't find on the other end of town. Mercantile, yoga studios, retail, entrepreneurs. Now your downtown could be more of an entertainment center as well, with some movie theaters, live music, and nightlife. These businesses, all of them, are going to bring more foot traffic, which is another one that many businesses talk to us about. A farmer's market was suggested as well, maybe in an empty lot downtown. Maybe it could coordinate with the one out on the other side of town. Maker spaces, incubators, innovation spaces, and co-working were all mentioned as well. So the old way of starting a business requires a lot of upfront cost, a building that's probably going to need a lot of work, and of course a product. And you have to get all that organized before you even open. Now imagine if you could find a way to start smaller and test your market and test your product out. So let's begin by looking at some ways to start tiny businesses that don't require that huge investment. It'll help you lower the barrier to entry for your entrepreneurs and let them test their ideas out and see if they work and create more excitement around that new business. And you want more new tiny business ideas to get tried, so you can find the most promising ones to grow. Now, we call this the innovative rural business models. These are also ideas you can add to the events that you're already doing. And there they are. The 5 parts are tiny, temporary, together, traveling, and tech. So remember, take a look at the ones that get you excited, but also take a look at how these different models might fit together. The first one is tiny, and this is a great example. This man has a shopping cart for a store with a few signs on it, parked on a busy street corner, and he's selling corn. And it looks like maybe some pork rinds too. So his initial investment is the cost of the product. That's a tiny start and a great way to see if people want to buy the product. Now, rather than expect all businesses to start full-sized, it's much easier to start something small. We've all seen the coffee kiosk and pop-ups, but it's an idea that we can extend to other tiny ideas. Starting small takes fewer resources and puts the entrepreneurs at less risk from those big failures. Now, Will is a middle school student, and he has this tiny business making bracelets. His first tiny test was at a festival in his hometown at his mom's friend's booth. So it didn't take much space at all. It's a tiny business inside a tiny business. Rose Ellis is another artist who rented just one tiny space in the window to display her paintings in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was an empty building, and the owner invited lots of tiny businesses to share the space. In an interview, Rose explained how important this tiny space together with other people was to her. She said, "You couldn't get me out of here with a crowbar. It's the best business plan I never thought of. It has turned my life around." The old way of doing business was in buildings that match our downtown, and they're made of permanent construction. And that's a hard way. These are artist shanties alongside Hyannis Harbor in Massachusetts that are a real popular tourist attraction. They're just sheds. The businesses here are using the innovative rural business models of tiny, temporary, and together. They're used by painters and photographers, jewelers, and other craftspeople. And they're open 7 days a week from late June until Labor Day. And when you see them, you know that summer has arrived. And it is a competitive program by application only. So in 14 seasons, they have hosted over 700 artists who have collectively sold over $1 million of arts and crafts. NISA set up over a 3-day event that featured junkers called Junk Fest. You know, the collectors of old things, junk, antiques, and some handmade products. She wanted to try out her idea of having a clothing store with some other cool products. And it was a great experiment. She began developing that list of customers. She sold almost everything and found out the price points she had, that those price points actually worked. Great idea to try out your idea. Pop-ups are just that, a small test of your business idea that pops up when and where it's needed. It can be as simple as having a table and your product displayed at a local event. Pop-ups can be a good way to test demand for a product or service. By opening a pop-up shop in a specific location, you can see how many people are interested in what you have to offer. This can help you to determine whether or not there's enough demand to support a more permanent business. Now, pop-ups can be a way to test your marketing and sales strategies too. How are people reacting to your branding? How do they respond to your pricing? How do they interact with your products or services? By testing these things in a pop-up setting, you get that valuable feedback you need that you can use to improve your business model. Pop-ups, they can be a one-time thing. They could be available over a set time, like a weekend, or even seasonal. So rather than expect entrepreneurs to start a permanent business, start businesses that pop up just for a weekend at an event, for the holidays, or really anytime, just to try your idea out. Like I said before, it is quick market research to check which new ideas may work and which may not. Now, Sue Anderson makes crocheted items and thought she might want to start a retail business. So she ran a pop-up in an empty building during an annual event in her town of Webster City, Iowa. She hosted it in an empty building and she completely sold out. But you know what? She never started her own store because she found out that keeping product available was beyond the scope of what she wanted to do. But she now has product in other stores around town. Another idea you guys could try out would be an incubator program. Now, we had a building owner in Webster City, Iowa that had several buildings downtown. I approached them with this incubator project idea. Put your buildings in the program and you offer 3 months free rent and reduce rent the rest of the year. Now, the chamber agreed to help those businesses that went into those empty buildings with marketing, and the Small Business Development Center came in to help the businesses with creating that valuable business plan while they were actually working. Now, the benefits to the owner, at least their utilities were being paid by somebody else. And we all know every building needs love, and this definitely provided that. The business could leave at any time. Remember, it's a way to test out the business idea, or they could stay as long as they wanted to. Did it work? Yes, it did. One of the businesses that used an empty building in this project was a Mexican restaurant. Now, the Mexican grocery store right downtown, they wanted to open a restaurant in the back of their store, but they were saving to buy that expensive commercial range hood. In the meantime, they took advantage of that incubator program for just 1 year. They tried different hours to see which worked best. They had different foods to see what people liked. And they also got to train their staff. They are now open back over across the street. The Village in Washington, Iowa is one of our favorite examples of sharing spaces. There was a huge old department store building. It sat empty for years, and the owners were struggling to find any tenant that could fill the whole thing. Well, finally, a group of locals took 15,000 square feet of the retail space and divided it up into individual storefronts, but they face the inside of the building. It really looks like a little village square inside the building. Each storefront is only a few hundred square feet, so those tiny retail businesses can fill them up. Inside the tiny village square in the center, they set up push carts and card tables to give even smaller retail opportunities for even tinier startups. So you can start a business just on one table, then move up to a push cart, then step up to fill a tiny storefront, and finally graduate to a space of your own downtown. So the most important part of this story is taking small steps. They did not divide the building into 10 equal spaces. They made a fairly big shop, several smaller shops, smaller push carts, and even tiny tables. There's even a one-wall bookstore, just shelves on the wall, room for everyone. So keep thinking smaller and smaller and smaller until you get down to just one wall or one table. So rather than focus on each business individually, start thinking about how to create a new business inside or alongside an existing business. Now, this can be retailers splitting a space or making use of an extra office in a service business, or even nurturing a tiny manufacturer inside of an existing industrial business. Whoops. This is actually, sorry, went a little too fast there, a flower shop in Roscommon County, Michigan. It's also got a business that sells produce and gifts and teas. So you can't even see, half the building is this new business, and this gentleman owns the flower shop. Services can also be tiny and traveling. Those are two of the innovative rural business models. You know, dog grooming can be tough to make profitable in a really small town, so it makes perfect sense to travel to cover several small towns. I love this example that was sent to us of a grooming service using a big blue dog-shaped trailer just to travel around. It's cute. Tech is also important. Now, this is Brad Martin. He's a machinist in Webster City again. He had a little equipment of his own, and he thought he had a good idea for a product to sell. And he called it the bottle grenade. It's a keychain, multi-tool, bottle opener, and fashion statement. He actually wanted to raise $2,500 to make these in his garage. It's a tiny idea, and you might even think it's not a good idea. All that matters is that Brad took some small steps and tested his idea. You know what he did? He put his bottle grenades on Kickstarter. That's an online funding platform. And he raised $42,000 through advance sales to people far beyond his hometown. Well, then Brad reinvested some of those profits and tried another idea. This is called the WTF, the wrench that fits. It's a combination pocket wrench, gear tie, pry bar, bottle opener, keychain, comes in 2 sizes, and is made of titanium. Brad went back to Kickstarter and raised another $85,000 with his WTF. He's a natural entrepreneur. He's really lucky that he also had a garage and some equipment of his own and the money to buy some materials to get started. But imagine how many more Brads are out there that are already selling online. They're not all as lucky. If you could get them small spaces to work in, maybe some shared equipment, you'd be able to pull down some of those barriers to entry. It's one of my favorites. This is the Old Geezers Club in Akron, Iowa. And now they're the local retired farmers that have moved into town. And their wives wanted their garages back. So they told the guys they had to find a new home for all their woodworking tools. They brought in their equipment so they could work on projects together and also teach other people how to use the tools. They're in a dry basement of a hospital that was also a school at one time. And there are individual businesses on the first floor, and they're expanding as they go. So this is kind of a retail market in an old building. And they're having a great time, by the way. So now we come to the question, what can you do right away? Well, you can take some small steps and get into action today. So I'm going to share a few ideas and a couple of stories from other towns. Rock Springs, Wyoming, 23,000 people, had an empty lot they converted into a mini golf course with rocks, of course. Okay, it's not really a business because it's free and sponsored and maintained by everyone in town, including the downtown businesses. So to play, that's free, and that creates a whole lot of goodwill. However, they do collect the email addresses of those people who play. What could your businesses do with those emails? Think about it. One tiny recreation space could introduce your downtown business association chamber to new customers. You could create an email newsletter. Always get permission first, by the way. This is Dan. He started his own private Facebook group, and he created it so business owners could get together and just talk. You guys could do this in your town, and it may be easier and more convenient than getting together in person. And you can ask questions or share stories at your leisure. So the purpose here is to build that camaraderie amongst your businesses. Befriend each other, help each other out. You can boost creativity while building community with co-crafting events like crafternoons or hacker or maker days. So tech enthusiasts, crafters, scientists, garage tinkers. At these kind of events, novices and experts both of all ages come together to show what they've made and share what they're learning. Now, if no business comes out of it, you're still bringing people together and having a good time. Teresa asked me, could she rake this empty lot next to her building? Well, I told her, yes, clean it up. Invite a few friends to join you late at night or early in the morning, kind of like ninjas, and make it more presentable. Does she own it? No, but that doesn't mean she can't take care of it. And they're certainly not going to say, hey, make that lot dirty again. There are also several buildings that are being used in your town that don't have signage on the store. I recommend put signage on it. It does make your town look even fuller. And this is your entry to the downtown. Why not dress it up with a mural or two on those side walls of those buildings? An example of one kind of local artist that you could be growing through your crafternoons and shared workspaces is Rose Williamson, and she's at the Crow Reservation in Montana. She started her beaded jewelry business from her home, and she expanded into making clothes too, like what you see here. And that's Rose in the middle. She sells her jewelry, clothing, and beadwork at pop-ups and events around the state and online. And because she is fairly well known, she gets a lot of event invitations, and she reaches out to other less well-known artists to come along with her and exhibit their art. So when you're looking for who would fill a shared art space or attend crafternoons or use your maker space, start by looking at who already sells in booths at events and sells online. Those are your seed businesses to not only fill the space, but also to support and inspire people who could make their art or hobby into a tiny business. Lots of towns have chain link fence, either downtown or along major traffic routes. It's a natural place to hang some art. Indianola, Iowa was renovating their courthouse. They tore it down, the whole square, and there was a big hole in the middle of town. Well, the county made the best of a messy situation by decorating the construction fencing with colorful banners that promote the county. And then they opened it up to the community for people to submit or sponsor their own banners. Since it's a multi-year project, they will continue to add more banners over time. And they're calling it Warren County Strong. to reflect the strength that their communities are showing during this really tough time. And trust me, it's much more attractive than a blank chain link and a busy construction site. If you look to the right of that picture, it should look familiar to you. There's the depot with a chain link fence around it. So you have the perfect place just waiting for some art. Our next idea is business inside a business. And this is really simple to start. You just walk into any existing retail business and ask if they'll dedicate one wall for another local business to decorate with something for sale. Now, this coffee shop is in Watertown, Minnesota. Coffee shop's on the other side. They asked a local photographer who worked from home if they'd display their work on this empty wall. It's beautiful. In Goffstown, New Hampshire, local artists have joined together and they put art on the walls inside existing businesses, but they also pop up temporary galleries inside of empty buildings. There's another great idea. Need a hunting store downtown? Well, why not start a smaller version of it? Fishing lures, bait, kids' poles. These things can be included in another store over in a corner. This could start as a business inside a business. Try it out, see how it works. And why not try ideas out with your pop-ups? You've got a few empty buildings. What if you tried to fill them with entrepreneurs in town that are already selling things? And when that works, you could divide the space up with several vendors. More business inside a business. Look inside your service businesses, your nonprofits, museums, government buildings, and any other places that are open to the public. If there's room for a shelf, you can turn that into another business. Now, this is one shelving unit in a local gas station in a tiny town in southeast Minnesota. He listened to his customers and provides other items like dog food and homemade jams and jellies. Perfect for his business. The next idea brings your hidden businesses out with new opportunities to sell and network.
You ready to move that?
Michelle Robles from Ohio helped put
Wow.
together a business showcase. Can somebody speaking, if you could put yourself on mute, that'd be
The
great.
floor wasn't even clean when she saw the floor.
I
I'm
don't,
not quite sure
what
how to
are
do
you
that,
talking
Becky.
about?
You said that Jennifer came in. and
Dude,
did
that
the
was
floor.
like hours ago. How am I supposed to know that you're still having the same conversation?
I'm
with me?
looking on how to
Dude, that
mute
was-
I
them.
was just curious.
She walked in here yesterday and
Deb, if you'll open your participant list, it looks like it's Chris. And if you can go
All right.
ahead and select mute for him, I'm not able to do
Thank
that since I'm not a
you.
co-host.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chris. Thanks for.
Okay, thanks, Becky. All right, so Michelle, who's from Ohio, she helped put together a business showcase, and it's specifically for home-based and rural businesses that were unknown to most people. And they had it in an empty building downtown. Michelle told us the seed of the concept was a local business owner who needed a custom hose for some piece of equipment. He had to drive 17 miles to the closest city for them until he found out that a small business just 2 miles away in the rural area could make them cheaper. And he had no idea they were there. So here's the unexpected bonus. Showcasing those hidden businesses resulted in the creation of at least 2 new businesses in town. Several communities in Iowa decided they wanted more entrepreneurs. So they held an informal gathering called EntreBash. Round tables were set up at the golf course so you could visit with each expert personally. You didn't have to go to all the tables, just the ones you needed help with. The young Hispanic couple you see in this photo met with the Small Business Development Center and have since started their own greenhouse business downtown. The next category is the city, and it was mentioned by quite a few people. One person even asked me to tell the city to work on making the weather better. Now we know that's not something they can control, but there are a few things that can be addressed here today. I heard you. I want you to know I heard you. Quite a few of you were concerned about city codes, enforcement issues, and lack of flexibility. Now, I think the best way to begin to find out the truth of the matter is get together and talk about it. This is one of the gatherings in the park where I got to hear what people wanted and ask questions too. You could do this in a small gathering as well, or even over a Zoom call, just like today, and answer questions. The city does have civic leadership classes, and some of these issues are being addressed there. Or have a public informal informational forum like thinking about buying a historical building, and then address those issues in that forum before they happen. Now, the code being used is the 2018 code, and bringing buildings up to code, it can seem daunting at times. Know that your code people really do want your best interest served in a safe and affordable manner. Escalating to anger is never really a good way to get your dilemmas solved. Also, don't forget the City Action Center, where you can request action on building issues, code enforcement, things like that. It also has the list of licensed contractors in your area. The Engineering Code Enforcement Development Group developed this site, and you'll find I'll have links at the end of this presentation where you can find that. Yes, infrastructure and communication. I guess you're starting to see the trend here with communication. Most things get resolved with transparency and communication. And as much as we'd like our streets to all be repaired at the same time, it's really just not possible or affordable. So what should take priority? Well, for me, it would be accessibility, adherence to those ADA standards. Start in the area where your seniors live, and you have a few buildings downtown. There's scooters and wheelchairs and walkers and canes. They all need to be able to be used so they're not stuck at home all the time. Another thing I heard and saw was that the city maybe should paint the lines on Bell Street because you can't tell where to park anymore. I also think the city has a plan on what areas get serviced when, so why not have that discussion be one of the forums? Finally, downtown rehab and communication. I'd like to know if there are incentives in place to assist rehabbing downtown properties. I don't know the answer to that exactly, but somebody does. I do know there are lots of federal government grants through organizations like the USDA that can address some of these dilemmas. And I also know that I believe it's pronounced Avidas has a grant writer that could help you with that. I also know that when you sit down with your crowd that's interested in addressing this big idea, there will be various solutions that come available. You have to talk to each other. Our next one was development or buildings. In this case, it could be either. The most comments came stating that they wanted the empty buildings to be filled along with the empty lots. So let's start with what to do about why the buildings are empty and what you could do about it. Local absentee owners, pretty common thing we hear. Sometimes they're local, but they just don't seem to ever do anything with their buildings. First of all, when was the last time you actually talked to them? Sometimes we think we've talked to someone, but we've just driven by the building, got frustrated about the appearance and said we're going to talk to them. And then life takes over and we forget. Well, call them up and invite them for coffee or a beer. It's a small step and it's meant to be an easy one. Really ask them what they want to do with their building. What's their big goal? How do they see their building fitting into the town's future? And ask if there's something you can do to help them. Sometimes the rent's just too high. And we hear about building owners who are asking for those rents that are much too high. And often this is because the building owners from a larger city where these rents make sense. Well, Julie Worley from Rocky Ford, Colorado, tiny town, 3,200 people, found a way to deal with this. She took rent negotiation authority from the building owners and she filled buildings. She called the empty building owners, learned everything about the buildings, and found out what they wanted for rent. Then she offered to get the buildings rented, but only if they gave her the authority to decide what the rent would be. Only one building owner said yes. And he had one building with 4 storefronts and he was out of town. Well, she knew someone who wanted to open a coffee shop, but there was a lot of plumbing work that needed to be done. The owner at that time wanted $450 a month for rent. Well, Julie had the woman pay the owner $100 a month in rent, and used the other 350 to pay against the plumbing until she recovered her cost. Took her 18 months to pay it off, but Julie filled all 4 storefronts that way. In her 10 years at Rocky Ford, she helped 17 mom and pop businesses open. Incentives are important too. You may want to talk to your local economic development group or your city council and see if there's some targeted incentives that can help meet part of those costs of compliance. So instead of only having incentives for recruiting business, might consider incentives to address that specific cost of compliance. Now, this is a report from Donovan Ripkema, who's known to work with downtown Main Street buildings that have gone out of business or that are empty. And in 2013, 11 years ago, the potential lost revenue of an empty building was over $220,000. I don't think people realize this, people or owners. So it's worth having a conversation too. Is it worth to keep your building vacant or empty? Probably not. Now, you could do adaptive reuse. And most of these reuse projects in places like Wisconsin, there they utilize local, state, and or federal incentives, such as revolving loan funds and facade grants and tax credits, brownfield cleanup funds, community development investment or CDI, or idle sites grants, and more. Crystal's on the call here. She's going to be the person you want to talk about this in more detail. She's working with development. And a few examples here are the Lawton Foundry in Des Peres. It was converted into loft and townhouse apartments in the heart of downtown. Their Brickner Woolen Mills in Sheboygan Falls was converted into housing. The first brick school, built in 1896, was converted 100 years later to apartments in New Galerius, Wisconsin. Just a few examples. This is an empty lot in the wintertime. Holloway, Minnesota. And if you look over to your left, they've actually turned this empty lot into an orchard. What a great use of space. Our first few ideas are about expanding the places your tiniest business startups can make sales and grow. And the Pueblo of Zuni, New Mexico had lots of local people making traditional crafts and arts, but very few usable commercial buildings. To support their artists in growing their businesses, they created an outdoor market area in an empty lot and started a series of arts and crafts market events. The artists reached more customers together at these temporary events than they would have each on their own. And this is easy to start in any town. Just take an empty lot, pick a weekend, and have your local crafters, artists, and entrepreneurs sell from pop-up booths. Give it a try. This is a great story. Tynesta, Pennsylvania lost an entire block of downtown buildings to a fire. Picture on the top. And that lot sat empty for 10 years. There was no one business coming to save their town. Then the Industrial Board, Development Board, decided to try something different. How about lots of tiny businesses? They actually put garden sheds on that empty block and added facades to match their other downtown buildings. And it's now known as the Tynesta Market Village, which is the picture on the bottom. Same spot as the one on top. Looks a little different. Each shed is home to a business that rents the space for about $50 a month. And there's a bakery that expanded from another town, a winery second location. There's a woman there that makes doll clothes, a man who sells hand-tied flies for those people that fish, a barbecue place, let's see, an artist retail space, and a candle shop. This market gives the local entrepreneurs the chance to try out their business ideas and test the market. They've also incubated new local businesses, like a pair of local pottery makers who were one of the first to rent a shed, and they've since outgrown it and moved into a larger garage in town. Next up, housing. Affordable housing led the list of wants around this topic, but it doesn't mean low rent housing. It means affordable across the board. So let's take a look at a few ideas. Prefab tiny houses. But what can we do to create more affordable housing? Well, how about this tiny house community? This house is made in York, Nebraska by Champion Home Builders. It's movable, but the recommendation is set it on a foundation so you don't move it. Spur, Texas is the first tiny house friendly town in the US. There's only 1,000 people and the county is 2,500 people. Over 70 lots have been sold over 2 years. Wood or metal framing, flush toilets connected to city utilities, and proper electricity. Their foundation is reinforced with rebar that goes 6 inches below the ground, which is their frost line. Vermont pays $5,000 per family to move there to work remotely. Now, in Vermont, over 50% of their people are over the age of 55. So this is a real smart move on the part of Vermont to get younger people working there. Akron, Iowa, where this picture is, sells their lots for $500, but you have to build within 1 year or they take the lot back with no refund. And their lots are now all sold out. They're looking at expanding into more land. My Cabin is a Latvian startup and very Scandinavian in design. Their prices are a little bit more, $37,000 to $140,000. Now they're prefab, built in a Chicago location and shipped on a truck. This is 270 square feet and it costs $88,000. It'd be a good place to maybe start with your investment group. You could sell it for a bit more and reinvest in the next house. AARP, I'm all about using their free information to get things done. Now they've got a wealth of information. One is ADUs. They're kind of a big deal these days and they solve many a problem. Accessory dwelling units. Say grandma lives in a big old house alone. Why not create an ADU for her and then make her home available perhaps to some grandchildren or for sale to a new family in town? Just an idea. AARP also has a home fit guide, and this is great to make homes for the elderly and really all of us a better fit. Did you know by 2030, 1 in 5 people in the US will be age 65 or over? Now, Jeremy Whipple, he started a group of investors called the Pipestone Development Company, and they're purchasing homes and businesses in Pipestone, Minnesota, and they're flipping them, and they're making good improvements to the community. 10 people with a $10,000 investment really can make a big difference. Can you find people in your communities who want to donate to save your housing? Maybe, again, worth having a conversation about. Next up is the homelessness. Now, one group of people wanted to find a better word to use, and the word unhoused was used, and that's a little more comfortable. The unhoused people are not just going to disappear, and it's a challenge you want to address. So here's just a few ideas and resources for you. In our visits to small towns, people talk about the difficulty in coordinating between multiple organizations. And often they're working on the same thing at the same time, but maybe in a completely different way, and maybe in ways that conflict with each other. People mention not knowing about important community events until they're over. Well, we suggest all the time to try coffee and calendars. It's really easy. Invite some people to coffee. Those could be people concerned and wanting to help with the unhoused. Talk about what programs are currently available and share information. Visit about working together in some manner and just see where the conversation takes you. Now, I understand that there may be one house group in place with nonprofit leaders that work with individuals to get them back into society. I just found out about it. Well, why not expand that group or start a new one that addresses getting resource information to the unhoused? And you could make a list of resources. Just put together a list of resources people can get to today. Make copies of them and hand them out. Post them, share them with the organizations and churches that are addressing the challenge. I like this idea of creating a Facebook group page. This particular one is in Santa Clara County in California, and they collect and provide resources. Many unhoused residents have a cell phone or access to one, and you want to make this Facebook group known about. And you might want to include admins from all over to include those places that offer resources. Don't just have one admin. Invite people you know to participate and make this a group that is making a difference. Not a negative group, but a positive group that is willing to help people out and share ideas. Invisible People TV. Our friend Mark Horvath has been working with the unhoused around the world. Check out his site. It's invisiblepeople.tv and become better educated. That's a great place to start. And then you can check out the video tabs. And I encourage you to watch the one that they did on Finland, what they're doing to combat the homelessness. It's more than just housing for them. It's a 30-minute video, and it'd be a good first post on that new Facebook group. Our next section was relationships. Now, I heard businesses need to work together more. There needs to be better communication between the city and the people. We don't know what's going on half the time. I heard that. Well, the best solution really is to begin building your relationships and sharing your stories. Spread the truth, not gossip. Tell the good stories. There's already a Facebook page called Positively Shawnee, and they collect positive stories around customer service and great interactions and just people doing great things in Shawnee. If you use the hashtag Tell Me Something Good Shawnee, now you're going to be able to track that and see some more of the good stories. Please share them. Next up, actually, there's people already at work in your community building relationships. So look around for the people with the red We Care t-shirts and stop and talk to them. You can visit their website. It's communityrenewal.org for more information. And according to the site, there are 4,726 people on that We Care team in your county. That's crazy. They already have 2 friendship houses with 7 active programs that are attended by 94 different individuals. And they have a kids club for young people to get involved. Come together. Another way to create relationships is form this informal group of business owners. Maybe just start with your blog and then come together after hours. Tour each other's business and talk about what products they carry and what are they doing for marketing and can they stay open later. It's really a great idea to get to know each other, so at least you can refer customers to each other. Tourism is the next section. You know, everybody loves a party, right? Now you can use your townwide events to create a stronger community, to fundraise and give people a chance to try out their ideas. But what if you added some other things to those events? At least once a month, you could actually print off the newsletter at visitshawnee.com, print it off and give it to frontline staff to train them, to have them a few answers when somebody says, what is there to do or where is there to eat? And instead of hearing, oh, head on down the road, there's nothing to do here, they can look at that handout and say, oh, try this place. So Bell Street has Third Thursday Bike Night. I hear there's going to be Monktoberfest in September. Stay in touch with Stacy. The Lunchbox has Third Thursday Poetry Night, and there's Third Friday at 317. It's a block party for Friday Night Arts. And I don't know if you knew about all those things, but check them out. Now, I have a secret for you. Don't do all the planning of events yourself. Reach out to your community and ask them what they want. And when they give you an idea, put them in charge of it. So when you plan it all yourself, the only choice you have is to come or not come. If you let me bring my own idea, I'm much more likely to come, invite all my friends, and enjoy the event. So the next few slides are events planned when I was chamber director at Webster City around one event. Let's have some fun with this. Gotta love it. I was responsible for planning this huge 12-hour party in my town, and there was no way I could plan it by myself. So I called everybody together and asked what they wanted to do. And then I just encouraged them to do it. This was human foosball, hysterical. And a local youth group suggested it and built it. It was a big hit. Who knew? Nickel Scramble, the local bank did this. They threw nickels on top of the straw inside of, on top of a tarp and let the kids go and collect nickels. Good project for a bank, huh? One of our businesses loved racing, and there was a racetrack in a local track in our town. He brought a couple of favorite racers in, another huge hit, parked right downtown for people to go talk to them. And this was an event called Music in the Park. The young man with a ponytail in front came into my office and he wanted the chamber to make an event with local music. I said no. I did tell him he could do it though, and I would help if I could. Well, he brought together his musician friends, created an open mic, and a full night of entertainment happened. People showed up. They even created their own posters and put them around town. It's a wonderful time of local people singing that we didn't even know about. Another thing you can do is post your hashtags. You're going to get more people to help promote your community that way. Now, when I visited Paulding, Ohio, there was a big sign painted on the wall. You can see it there. It says Fighters on an empty building. It was advertising a business that was no longer there in a building where the owner lived overseas and was never coming back. Well, before I left, we covered it by painting their favorite hashtag promoting the town. And no, we did not ask for permission. Lots of people honked and cheered when they drove by, including the county sheriff. This was a good way to make more locals aware of the My Paulding hashtag. So these are the rest of the responses broke down, as you can see in this image. And as this intensive programming moves forward that Becky and I are doing, we're going to address some of these issues as well. Today, time just doesn't permit it. We are working with Stacy Moore to get information out to all of you. So we'll be sharing videos so you can have watch parties for those that are interested. I'm meeting next week over the Zoom with the city manager to go into a little more detail what I heard about the city and things people want, and perhaps some possible actions that people can take. I got 2 links for you. First of all, thanks for having me in your town. I really appreciate it. The top link is where you can subscribe free to our weekly newsletter, and it's full of ideas. And we're doing the Survey of Rural Challenges, and it ends the last day of May. Please answer the 10 questions and help us share those results from what rural people tell us, not what some big city organization is telling us. You can receive the PDF version of this presentation and the recording from Stacy in a few days. And the last 2 pages are just a few resources to explore. I think you'll enjoy looking at them. And there's one with links of things that you talked about, headed up by the City Action Center. And that, my friends, is my presentation. We did pretty good there with 48 minutes. Now let me see if I can get back to you. There we go. And we're going to go into the chat room, see what kind of questions we have.
Deb, we've not had any questions pop up in the chat yet. I've put the links for the 2 last things there, but absolutely, we do welcome your questions. So feel free to put them in the chat, or if you're on video, then you can raise your hand or wave at us and we will.
And just wave at me anyway, okay? Thank you, everybody. I recognize, I think, all the faces here that are showing me your faces. Thank you for coming today. Stacy, I'm going to make you ask a question. You started off, would you?
Oh, gosh. Well, if you can imagine, Deb gave me my to-do list as well. So one of the things that I've been working with the last couple days is we had a lot of interest in maybe some murals and how more murals, and we're kind of a little stuck on kind of where to start. So talking with a professional who does murals to come in and just kind of give us a tutorial on what to do and kind of where to start and what questions we need to ask and what kind of buildings we could paint on, and just kind of get us over the hump and get us thinking more about how to do the project instead of thinking about the project.
That's great. I like that you're doing a forum open to everybody, right?
Yeah, it'll be open to everybody.
Excellent.
Um,
Excellent.
What I really liked some of the discussions we had about getting the business owners together and talking more, even if it's just 2 or 3 of them. And how, do you have any suggestions kind of where to start on that?
Actually, I do. I met with, I don't know which block it is. It's where Uncommon Threads is, that block. We met with several business owners there, and they've already said that that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to get together after hours and just meet over, it could be maybe a glass of wine or it could be a cup of coffee. And they're just going to share some things about what they're doing and some ideas of how they might be able to work together. You know, staying open later was something that was mentioned quite a bit. And if you can just start block by block, I think that's a great way to start. A lot of the building owners or business owners are interested in staying open later. They just haven't figured out how to do it all the time. Again, start small, do it 2 nights a week and see how that goes, and do it for more than just a month. You have to make a commitment to it so people get used to knowing that you're there on those days.
Mhm.
Deb, can I throw in one other idea?
Please, that's why you're here. Absolutely.
Okay, I was in Ponca City, or I spoke to a woman from Ponca City named Elena, and she runs a downtown business called, I think it's called the Doodle Shop, the Doodle Place. Everybody calls her the Doodle Lady. That's how I know her. But she and some other downtown businesses just started a text message group because that was easier than getting together. So they started a group chat and started sharing, oh, here's a great article I read, or here's a tip, or we're doing an event and we thought that you other businesses might want to connect up with it. So a text message group can be an easier place to start than, hey, give up some of your time to come to a meetup.
That is a great idea. And, you know, Ponca City are 2 words I was told we don't need to talk about a lot. Because we know Shawnee is just as exciting as Ponca City is.
Well, you know, just forgive Elena for where she's from, but it's a great
She
idea
can't help
from
it.
some other Oklahoma town. See, we
You
get
can
that too because I'm from the Alva area, and I cannot tell you how many times Alva has been told, well, if you were more like Ponca City, and we're all just like,
Oh, shut up. Yes.
ah.
But you know, they had to start somewhere, and I'm sure Ponca City wasn't always fabulous. And you guys can do that too.
Kind of on that same question path, when the folks at Arts at 317 have their block parties, they get a fairly nice little crowd. Those are fun to go to. But we've got some businesses on the other end of Main Street that would like to participate, and we've had some problems getting folks from one place to another. Do you have any suggestions on how to get them 4 or 5 blocks down the street?
I was going to say it's about 4 or 5 blocks, right?
Mhm.
But you could create kind of a trail,
Mhm.
you know, create a little trail map and make it fun. And maybe there's a prize, something simple. At the other end is the painting place where they also have great coffee. I forget the name of it. They might be willing to be able to be the end stop. So I'd visit with her. She was fabulous. She's the woman, Becky, that said she started her own business when she was really young. And she said, well, that's all I know how to do. It's just what you do. She was a good visit as well.
You can also do like pop-ups all along the way or just like in the middle. And so those 2 things. One is, could you do pop-ups along the route to get people on down the road? Or can we, if it's like one at this end and then 4 or 5 blocks away is the other end, can we get something going in the middle so it's really only a block gap in each case, so that you can, whatever you can do to cut down the actual perceived distance between the 2 locations.
And there's empty lots in between. So absolutely, I think there's something you can do with that. I have a story for everybody here. You may not know. Becky, you don't know. Ryan and Stacy and I are all from Iowa. I just had to throw that in there because, you know, I see Ryan laughing. Do we have any other questions? This is the opportunity to ask it. And if you're a little shy and don't want to do it now, please feel free to send me an email, deb@saveyour.town, and I will answer it.
Angela, are you from Gilded Grayland?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Angela. What do you got going on over there?
I'm just taking notes.
No, no, no. I mean, do you have any events or activities coming up?
We've
would
got
you
lots of
explain-
them.
Um,
Um,
tell Becky what you do.
we're a board game store. And so our primary goal though is to build community. So we've got space in there with a library that people can come in and rent and they can sit down and play games. And then we have various events happening for lots of different particular games that exist. A lot of trading card game events going on. We got Pokemon every Saturday morning for kids. And then we're starting some D&D groups. Those just started last week, and we have like murder mysteries for adults, and we're gonna have some other big like group adult games coming up this summer. We've got a young gamers summer club happening that's gonna start. We have a Pokemon camp we're gonna do this summer as well. So we've got a lot going on. Yeah.
That's excellent. And you may have some availability too of the space to be used for an informational forum, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, I love the people that work at the city across the board. Holding meetings at the city hall is rarely conducive to happiness and ideas going forward. Trying to be politically conservative, Andrea. But you know what I mean? It comes with a lot of history and you tend to be more formal and expected to act a certain way. Where when you go to a spot that has gaming and board games and mystery stuff, you're a little more relaxed. So work with Angela. They've done a fabulous job there. And I want to hear more things happening from you. Do you post these things anywhere where can people find you?
We do. We have a Facebook page, the Gilded Grayland. And so we post all of our events there and on Instagram. We've got a page as well. And then we have a website that has an event calendar as well.
And they
Gilded
should
Grayland.
our
Okay.
calendar as well, so we've
Yes.
it there.
Yes,
And
we put it on the Visit Shawnee.
They just celebrated their year anniversary, so
They
they had a
did.
big celebration Saturday, and my husband came home with some new board games for us that we've been playing, and so thanks for that, and we're really
That's
enjoying it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I love that.
Congratulations on a year. Good
Thank
job.
you. Thank you.
Stacy, talk a little bit about your calendar.
We've got a calendar. It's visitshawnee.com/events, and anyone can put their event on there. Obviously, we focus on tourist events, which are events that bring people to Shawnee, but we didn't have a good community calendar. And so we do have a locals tab, and that's for things that maybe you want to do with your group or your church bean dinner, or just community get-togethers that are really for the community can also be posted on that calendar, and they're all under that locals tab. So totally free. Anyone can post on there, and we try to share that. It's also a good landing spot if you don't have a website or need a place to kind of get your social media engaged. You can create an event on there and then link to that event, so people have one place to get that information. So it's very helpful there too for our smaller organizations.
And that's visitshawnee.com, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I put both Gilded Grayland's name and Visit Shawnee in the chat box for those of you interested. And we have about 1 minute left to the hour. Oh, see, I spelled it wrong. Oops. Sorry,
That's
Angela.
okay.
Thanks for correcting it.
No problem.
So we had great meetings. Thank you to everybody who came out. It was overwhelmingly positive. There were so many good ideas, and I think we're all very excited to see what the next steps will be as our community comes together and starts to implement some of these things. So I want to thank you guys. Could you finish off and tell them a little bit about the next steps with Save Your Town and kind of where we'll see you next and what our next steps will be?
Yep. So I think based on what I heard when I was in town, some watch party with a couple of the videos, not all at the same time, but a few different watch parties is a great idea. We have over 30 different videos at savior.town. And there's some about filling empty buildings and entrepreneurial videos. Lost my mind, all kinds of stuff there for you to check out. So Stacy and Andrea and I am sure we'll look through those, and maybe Angela too might be interested, and see which ones would be what you'd like to see, right? And we'll make it happen. I will be on it with you, or Becky will be on it with you. The way those work, they're Zoom, and we're able to stop the video. So we might watch 5 minutes and somebody will raise their hand, I'm like, okay, and we'll stop it and talk about what their question is or what they heard or more ideas. They're exciting and they're a lot of fun to do.
If you subscribe to the Savior.town newsletter, you'll start to see some of those videos, and they do a lot of free stuff as well. So kind of you can see what those videos are like before you think you're going to commit some time to it. But they're fantastic, and there's a lot of community building, just not economic development, not tourism stuff, just how to make your community work better together, that are really good videos on there as well.
We're supporters of small towns, and we want people to have the kind of town they want to live in, and that happens when they make the decision to do that and get started. You have the resources, you have the people, and I know you've got both of those, and people that want to move forward and do some great things. And there'll be more down the road, 6-month process. So if you have questions, email me, please. Deb@savior.town.
I did discover that meetings with pets are much better than meetings without pets. So that may be something we need to implement, more meetings with pets.
That's why I had to share that picture of the cat sitting next to you.
That was the most relaxed cat I've ever seen. There were people, there was all kinds of activity, and that cat had established its spot and was not moving.
That's kind of a good idea. You could have, you could sit, everybody show up with a lawn chair under a shade tree and bring their puppies with them. Why not?
Mhm.
Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate taking your time out today, and we'll be talking to you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.